My wife faked a terminal illness for sympathy and funds, but her scheme unraveled spectacularly at the farewell gala, exposing her lies and our family's true colors. Okay, Reddit, I need to get this all out, because I'm reeling, shattered, and honestly, a little bit terrified. I don't even know where to begin, or if anyone will believe me, but I have to try. This isn't just a breakup story. It's a descent into a nightmare I never saw coming, a betrayal so profound it has twisted my entire perception of reality. My wife, Clara, the woman I loved and cherished for 5 years, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, is a pathological liar, a manipulator, and a con artist who faked a terminal illness to extract sympathy and money from everyone around her. And I, her devoted husband, was her biggest, most heartbroken mark. It all started subtly, almost imperceptibly, about 1.5 years ago. Clara had been complaining of persistent fatigue, headaches, and a general malaise. At first, I was concerned, naturally. We'd been trying for a baby, and I wondered if it was stress or something related to fertility issues. We went to our family doctor, who ran a battery of tests. Everything came back normal. The doctor suggested perhaps a lifestyle change, less stress, more sleep. Clara seemed frustrated, but I thought nothing of it. We all get stressed. A few months later, the symptoms escalated. She started having what she described as blinding migraines, inexplicable bruising, and periods of extreme weakness where she'd collapse onto the couch, pale and trembling. She'd complain of joint pain so severe she couldn't walk without a limp. I urged her to see a specialist, a neurologist, an internal medicine expert. She resisted at first, saying she didn't want to be a hypochondriac, but I insisted. We saw several doctors, more tests, more scans, and again, nothing definitive. They found some minor inflammatory markers, but nothing that explained the severity of her symptoms. One doctor even suggested psychosomatic origins, which Clara furiously dismissed, calling him dismissive and incompetent. This is where the narrative started to shift. Clara began talking about rare diseases, obscure autoimmune conditions that were hard to diagnose. She'd spend hours online, researching medical forums, poring over scientific papers I couldn't understand. She started using medical jargon, talking about T-cell deficiencies and mitochondrial dysfunction and undiagnosed neurological syndromes. I was worried, of course. My beautiful, vibrant wife was wasting away before my eyes, or so I believed. She lost weight, her eyes often seemed sunken, and her usually lustrous hair began to look dull. She started wearing scarves and hats more often, even indoors, claiming she was sensitive to light or just felt cold all the time. Her family, particularly her mother, was incredibly supportive. Clara's mom, bless her heart, is a worrier by nature, and she immediately threw herself into finding answers. She started cooking special meals, researching alternative therapies, and accompanying Clara to appointments. My own parents, while concerned, were a little more pragmatic. My dad, a retired engineer, tends to look for concrete evidence, and the lack of a diagnosis frustrated him. My mom, a nurse, was also perplexed by the contradictory symptoms and the absence of clear medical findings. But they trusted us, they trusted Clara, and they saw her suffering. Then came the diagnosis. Clara called me one afternoon, her voice trembling, choked with tears. She said she'd just gotten off the phone with a specialist she'd found online, someone in a different state who had reviewed her files. This specialist, she claimed, had identified a highly aggressive, rapidly progressing form of an extremely rare autoimmune neurodegenerative disorder. The name she used was complex, something I'd never heard of, but it sounded terrifying. She said the specialist had told her it was terminal, with only a few months, maybe a year, left to live. My world shattered. I remember falling to my knees, the phone slipping from my grasp. Clara was crying hysterically on the other end. "I'm dying, Mark," she sobbed. "I'm dying, and there's nothing they can do." The next few weeks were a blur of grief, despair, and frantic attempts to find a miracle. I called every specialist I could find, trying to get second and third opinions, But Clara was adamant that this specialist was the only one who truly understood her case. She refused to share his contact information or even the name of his clinic, saying he was a private consultant who only worked with a select few patients and that contacting him directly would violate his confidentiality. This sounded odd, but in my panic, I dismissed it. I was focused on her, on us, on the horror of losing her. Clara's health seemed to decline rapidly after the diagnosis. She started using a cane, then a wheelchair for longer distances. Her speech became slurred at times, and she'd have episodes of disorientation. She was often in pain, whimpering softly in her sleep. I became her primary caregiver, working from home as much as possible, cooking all her meals, helping her with everything. My career took a backseat. My friends, seeing my distress, offered their support. Our families rallied around us. This is when the financial aspect began. Clara couldn't work, of course. Her treatments, she claimed, were incredibly expensive and not covered by insurance. She spoke of experimental therapies, rare medications, and specialized equipment. We drained our savings. I took out a second mortgage on our house. My parents, seeing our desperate situation, offered us a substantial loan, urging us to use it for whatever Clara needed. Clara's mother set up a GoFundMe, detailing Clara's brave fight against this insidious disease. The story was heartbreaking. Photos of a frail Clara, looking pale and gaunt, accompanied the plea for donations. People opened their hearts and their wallets. Friends, colleagues, even strangers, donated thousands. The outpouring of love and support was overwhelming, and I was so grateful. I truly believed everyone was helping us fight for her life. Clara also started talking about making memories, about living life to the fullest in her remaining time. She wanted to travel, to see the world before it was too late. We went on several trips, a cruise to Alaska, a few weeks in Europe, a luxury resort in the Caribbean. I put everything on credit cards, telling myself that memories were priceless, that I would deal with the debt later. What was money when the love of my life was dying? The constant caregiving, the emotional toll, the financial strain, it was all immense. I was exhausted, perpetually anxious, and utterly heartbroken. But I loved her. I believed her. I would have done anything for her. As the end drew nearer, Clara decided she wanted to have a farewell gala. A celebration of her life, she called it, a chance to say goodbye to everyone she loved. She wanted it to be a beautiful, memorable event. A local event hall was booked, a caterer hired, a band arranged. She picked out a stunning, flowing white gown, saying she wanted to feel like an angel. The invitations were sent out, a poignant message about celebrating Clara's indomitable spirit in the face of impossible odds. Our families and friends pulled together to make it happen. My parents contributed significantly to the cost, as did Clara's mother. People from all walks of our lives, friends, colleagues, neighbors, even people who only knew Clara through her GoFundMe updates, confirmed their attendance. It was going to be a huge event, a final outpouring of love and respect for a woman bravely facing her mortality. The day of the gala arrived. I was a wreck. I had barely slept, consumed by a suffocating grief. Clara, however, seemed strangely calm, almost radiant. She had spent hours with a makeup artist and hairstylist, and despite her supposed illness, she looked breathtakingly beautiful in her white gown, albeit still appearing frail. She was in a rented, elaborately decorated wheelchair, which I was pushing. The hall was packed, filled with hushed conversations and tearful embraces. Everyone was there for Clara. For us. As the evening progressed, there were speeches. Her mother spoke, choked with emotion, about her brave daughter. My father spoke, his voice cracking, about his admiration for Clara's strength. I had prepared a speech, a eulogy of sorts, expressing my undying love and promising to honor her memory. I was about to go up to the stage, my heart pounding with sorrow, when something happened. Clara had been sitting at a prominent table at the front of the room, surrounded by her closest friends and family. During a pause in the speeches, she suddenly looked agitated. She started fumbling in her purse, pulling out her phone. I saw her glance nervously towards the main entrance. Then, a gasp rippled through the crowd. Standing at the entrance, looking utterly bewildered and slightly angry, was a man I recognized instantly. It was Dr. Davies, the actual internal medicine specialist who had seen Clara several times over a year ago, the one who had suggested psychosomatic origins for her symptoms. He was holding a glass of wine, dressed in a casual suit, and looked like he had just arrived, clearly not expecting to walk into a farewell gala. The air in the room became thick with an almost palpable tension. Clara's face drained of all color. She started whispering frantically to her mother, pulling at her arm. Then, Dr. Davies, clearly sensing something was deeply wrong, started walking slowly towards our table. He looked from Clara to me, then back at Clara, a frown creasing his brow. "Clara," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the suddenly silent room. "What on earth is going on here? I received an anonymous tip, a very strange email saying you were having a farewell party. Are you all right? Are you feeling worse? We haven't seen you for follow-up in months, and your tests were inconclusive at best." My blood ran cold. "Dr. Davies," I said, stepping forward, my voice shaky. Clara was diagnosed with a terminal neurodegenerative disorder by a specialist in another state. She's been fighting it for months. Dr. Davies stared at me, then at Clara, his frown deepening. "A terminal what now?" "Mr. Peterson, Clara's last tests, which were conducted over a year ago, showed no evidence of any neurodegenerative disorder. There were some inflammatory markers, yes, but nothing that would suggest a terminal illness. In fact, her physical exams were remarkably normal given her complaints. We strongly suspected somatic symptom disorder, given the lack of objective findings and her resistance to further, more targeted investigations. We even referred her for psychological evaluation, which she never followed through on." The words hit me like a physical blow. Somatic symptom disorder. Psychological evaluation. No evidence of a terminal illness. It was like a switch flipped in my brain, and 1,000 tiny inconsistencies, 1,000 nagging doubts I had suppressed, flooded my consciousness. Her refusal to name the specialist. The lack of official medical records. The sudden, dramatic decline after the diagnosis. The way she always looked sick in photos but could suddenly perk up for a trip. Clara, meanwhile, was trying to wheel her chair away, frantically. "Mom, let's go." "I don't feel well," she hissed, but it was too late. Her mother, her face a mask of confusion and dawning horror, was already looking at Dr. Davies. "Doctor, are you saying my daughter isn't dying?" Dr. Davies shook his head slowly. "Based on the medical records I have, Mrs. Jenkins, there is no evidence whatsoever that Clara has a terminal illness, or any serious illness, for that matter. Her last workup was completely clear, apart from those minor inflammatory markers, which could be anything." The silence in the room was deafening. Every single eye was on Clara, and then she did something I will never forget. She rose from her wheelchair. Slowly, deliberately, she stood up. And she walked. Without a limp, without trembling, she walked perfectly normally, a picture of health, towards the nearest exit. A collective gasp, a murmur of disbelief, erupted from the crowd. Her mother screamed. My parents looked utterly gutted. My dad's face was a mixture of fury and profound disappointment that I just stood there, paralyzed, watching her walk away. The woman I had grieved for, sacrificed for, loved with every fiber of my being, was walking. She was not dying. She had never been dying. The scene that followed was pure chaos. Her mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. My parents rushed to me, my mom clutching my arm, her eyes filled with pity and anger. People started shouting questions. "What is going on? Is this a joke?" She faked it. Clara, hearing the commotion, paused at the exit. She turned back, her eyes wide, desperate. "I'm sorry," she cried out, her voice echoing in the vast hall. "I'm so sorry. I just wanted attention. I just wanted to be loved." Then she bolted. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. I just stood there, feeling the weight of the betrayal crush me. The GoFundMe, the second mortgage, the trips, the tears, all of it. A colossal, elaborate lie. The gala dissolved into a scene of bewildered guests, angry family members, and me, utterly broken. Dr. Davies, looking grim, stayed to answer questions, confirming that he had indeed received an anonymous email from someone who had grown suspicious of Clara's increasingly theatrical symptoms. He admitted that he had initially dismissed it as a prank but felt compelled to come and check, just in case. Turns out, the anonymous tipster was one of Clara's own best friends who had started noticing her looking suspiciously healthy when she thought no one was watching. The aftermath has been a nightmare. Clara's mother is beside herself, torn between anger at her daughter and intense shame. She is now desperately trying to contact everyone who donated to the GoFundMe, promising to return the money, which she says Clara has already spent a significant portion of. My parents are furious, not just at Clara for the financial deception, but at me for being so easily manipulated, though they're trying to hide it. They're also incredibly concerned about my emotional state. I've initiated divorce proceedings. There's no coming back from this. She didn't just lie. She orchestrated a months-long campaign of emotional torture, financial devastation, and public deception. She used her supposed death as a weapon to control me, to get money, to get attention. I feel like a fool. A complete and utter fool. How could I have been so blind? So trusting? I loved her so much that I ignored every red flag, every inconsistency. I wanted to believe her, wanted to fight for her, wanted to save her. Now, I'm left with crippling debt, a shattered heart, and a profound sense of betrayal that I don't think I'll ever recover from. I'm afraid to trust anyone ever again. I'm afraid of what she might do next, what other lies she's told, what other schemes she might have running. My entire world has been turned upside down, and I don't know how to put it back together. I guess I'm just looking for validation, for advice, for anyone who has been through something similar. How do you heal from this? How do you rebuild your life when the person you swore to spend it with turns out to be a monster? And how do I even begin to explain this to the world, to all the people who grieved with me, to all the people who donated their hard-earned money to a lie? I feel like I'm drowning. Reddit. I'm utterly, completely drowning.